How many of you were aware that China played a vital role in protecting Africa, particularly from the United States and their cunning interests? So, in order to clearly understand this, firstly you need to know how they initially entered Africa. The United States made its first mark in Africa from the early 2000s, taking on challenges like poverty alleviation, corruption, and food crisis. One standout effort was the Millennium Challenge Corporation, also known as the MCC, which was formed in 2004. The initiative brought financial aid to countries committed to good governance, economic freedom, and investing in their people. The United States focused on driving economic growth and fighting poverty through strategic investments in areas like agriculture, infrastructure, and education. Also, the United States President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which was launched in 2003, helped around 26.6 million people in sub-Saharan Africa. The President's Emergency Fund played a vital role in fighting against the devastating HIV/AIDS epidemic in Africa by providing funds for prevention and treatment, which had a tremendous impact in the battle against this deadly disease. Although there is no denying that the United States assisted Africa in its early phases with dealing with its struggles, but what happened after that will shake you up. As the U.S. initiatives aimed at curbing poverty and corruption, however, China came in with a different approach. China's engagement with Africa has indeed emphasized trade, loans, and infrastructure development, which has been creating a win-win situation for both the parties. We all know that China is one of Africa's largest creditors, and also the trade relationship between these two countries have been rapidly surging. However, throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Africa faced a major debt crisis and was dealing with falling commodity prices, forcing it to rely on loans and support from international financial organizations such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. The crucial point to remember here is that the United States is one of the largest shareholder in the IMF. Little did they know that the aid they received would come at a steep cost, with stringent conditions known as structural adjustment programs. Under those conditions, African nations were required to implement economic reforms, including a set of economic policies, usually consisting of tax increases, currency devaluation, privatization of state-owned enterprises, and trade liberalization. The goal was to fix economic imbalances and encourage long-term growth. Whereas the implementation of structural adjustment programs, also known as SAPs, often had adverse effects on African economies and societies. As if that wasn't enough, African industries, already grappling with underdevelopment, were left defenseless against cheap foreign products. Local manufacturers, once vibrant and thriving, struggled to compete and were forced to downsize or shut down altogether. The once proud and independent economies of Africa were now dependent on the mercy of global market forces. Corruption, inequality, and poor governance were all ignored. The emphasis was exclusively on implementing market-oriented changes, which would benefit the IMF and the United States with little concern for underlying structural issues. The rich became richer, the poor became poorer, and Africa became trapped in a cycle of dependency and insecurity. These conditions were directly backed and supported by the United States, but China did not. China knew that the 1980s and 1990s were challenging decades for Africa as the continent struggled with economic hardships and the burden of loans from international financial institutions, particularly the International Monetary Fund. During this time, China emerged as a significant player, providing crucial support to African nations to overcome the challenges imposed by the IMF and helped to foster a new era of economic cooperation. China's approach to supporting Africa differed significantly from that of the IMF. While the IMF emphasized structural adjustment programs that often resulted in change in economic policies and painful reforms, China took a different path, focusing on building strong economic and political ties and providing assistance in a way that aligned with African priorities and aspirations. Their approach was rooted in the principles of South-South cooperation, emphasizing equality, mutual benefit, and respect for national sovereignty. China made a big step by canceling or decreasing significant portions of its debt. This brave move provided a financial lifeline, reducing pressure and allowing African governments to allocate scarce resources into much-needed development programs. It also invested in large-scale infrastructure projects in Africa, including the construction of roads, railways, ports, and power plants, like the Maputo-Kadam Bridge and the Senegambia Bridge. Connecting Senegal and Gambia are notable infrastructure projects that China participated in during this period. These projects aim to improve transportation infrastructure and connectivity within and between African countries. This has enhanced intra-regional trade and attracted foreign direct investment, leading to job creation and increased productivity. These investments have opened up new markets for African countries to export their products to the vast Chinese market. The increased trade has helped diversify African economies and reduce their dependence on traditional trading partners. These investments in Africa have brought along technology transfer. Chinese companies have introduced new technologies and expertise in various sectors, helping African nations upgrade their industries and build local capabilities. Moreover, in 2014, when the Ebola outbreak hit Africa, the United States was slow to respond. China responded rapidly to the Ebola crisis by sending medical supplies and equipment to affected countries in West Africa. Chinese medical teams were dispatched to provide on-the-ground support, including expertise in disease control, treatment, and containment, and the response helped fill the urgent need for medical resources in the affected regions. Also supported in the establishment of treatment centers in West Africa, providing both financial assistance and provided training programs and shared their knowledge and experience in handling infectious diseases. This capacity-building effort aimed to empower local healthcare professionals and strengthen their ability to combat the outbreak. China actively engaged in international cooperation and information sharing to combat the Ebola outbreak. The Chinese government worked closely with international organizations, including the World Health Organization, to coordinate efforts, exchange best practices, and contribute to the global response. But in recent times, Xi Jinping has also played a significant role in shaping China's engagement and development efforts in Africa. Under his leadership, China has intensified its focus on Africa and implemented various initiatives like the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, a platform that brings together Chinese and African leaders to discuss and enhance cooperation, and also the Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to enhance connectivity. Through initiatives like these, Xi Jinping has deepened cooperation between China and Africa, fostering a partnership that aims to promote shared prosperity and sustainable development. Today, Africa stands tall as a beacon of hope, and it is thanks to China's unwavering support. China's contribution to Africa's development goes far beyond the Ebola crisis. Through robust trade, transformative infrastructure projects, the relationship between China and Africa is not just one of convenience, it is built on mutual respect and a deep-rooted partnership. China's continued investments will pave the way for Africa's success, ensuring its bright future. Tycoon territory.